Have you ever noticed how some people seem to carry themselves with an almost magnetic calmness? No matter what chaos unfolds around them, they remain steady, composed, unshakable. It's not luck or genetics. That unbreakable presence is cultivated, and it starts with the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Picture this: two people face the same setback, a crushing failure, a public embarrassment, a sudden loss. One spirals into frustration while the other responds with quiet strength. What separates them isn't circumstance, it's habit, the daily practices that shape how they see the world and, in turn, how the world sees them. Stoicism isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about forging an aura of resilience so powerful it changes how you move through life. Think about the modern world: endless distractions, relentless pressure, the constant pull of comparison and noise. It's easy to feel scattered, reactive, as if your emotions control you instead of the other way around. But Stoic habits offer a different path. These aren't abstract ideas, they're actionable tools. They teach you to pause before reacting, to find clarity in chaos, to stand firm when everything around you feels unstable. And the result, a presence that commands respect without demanding it, a calm that inspires others, and a mindset that turns obstacles into opportunities. This is how you build a life not just of survival, but of unshakable strength. Today, we're diving deep into 25 Stoic habits that have shaped philosophers, leaders, and icons throughout history, practices you can start applying right now. These aren't quick fixes, they're lifelong principles that rewire how you think, act, and show up in the world. Whether it's mastering your mornings, reframing setbacks, or cultivating gratitude in the grind, each habit is a step toward that unshakable aura. Imagine walking into any room knowing nothing can knock you off center. That's the power of Stoicism, and it's closer than you think. Let's begin. The first habit that builds an unshakable presence. Morning reflection. It's not just about waking up, it's about waking up right. The Stoics knew this well. Take Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled an empire but still began each day with quiet introspection. He didn't reach for his scrolls or summon advisors. He sat with himself, writing reminders like, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That's the power of starting your day with intention. This isn't about mystical rituals or lengthy routines. It's a simple practice. Carve out 10 minutes before the world demands your attention. Sit with a journal or just your thoughts. Ask yourself, what's one virtue I want to embody today? Maybe it's patience during a hectic meeting, courage to face a difficult conversation, or gratitude when minor frustrations arise. Visualize the day ahead, not just what you'll do, but how you'll be. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, anticipating challenges so they don't catch you off guard. Imagine traffic testing your calm, a coworker's remark tempting irritation, or fatigue making you snap. By rehearsing your response now, you're programming resilience for later. Why does this work? Because most people wake up reactive. They check phones, absorb bad news, rush into tasks, and let external chaos dictate their internal state. Morning reflection flips that script. You're not a leaf blown by the wind, you're the tree, roots deep in your values. Seneca wrote, "Every morning, prepare yourself for the slap of the day." Not to fear it, but to meet it with eyes open. Try this tomorrow. Before you touch your phone, ask 3 questions. What can I control today? What's my anchor when stress rises? Who do I choose to become in the face of obstacles? Write 1 sentence for each. That's it. Over time, this habit rewires your default setting from frantic to focused, from scattered to steady. And that's how an unshakable aura begins, not with grand gestures, but with quiet mornings where you decide in advance who you'll be when the world tries to shake you. Now let's talk about the second habit that fortifies an unshakable mindset: negative visualization. At first glance, dwelling on worst-case scenarios might sound counterintuitive, even pessimistic. But the Stoics called this practice premeditatio malorum, and it's anything about wallowing in fear. It's about disarming fear. Here's how it works. You deliberately envision challenges, losses, or setbacks before they happen. Not to torment yourself, but to strip those events of their power to shock you. Imagine your job disappearing overnight, a loved one walking away, or your health taking a sudden turn. Sit with those thoughts, not as a victim, but as someone who's already reckoned with them. Take Seneca, who wrote letters reminding himself that everything he owned, his wealth, status, even his relationships, were merely on loan from fate. He'd mentally rehearse losing them all. Why? Because when you confront potential losses head-on, two things happen. First, you realize you could endure them. Second, you appreciate what you have now with razor-sharp clarity. The colleague who annoys you, picture their seat empty tomorrow, the commute that drains you. Imagine losing the freedom to drive at all. Suddenly, irritation fades and gratitude rushes in. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Our brains are wired to amplify uncertainty. The unknown feels far scarier than the known. By mentally walking through worst-case scenarios, you're literally rewiring your amygdala's response. Fear shrinks because you've already faced it in your mind. Navy SEAL use a version of this before missions, visualizing every possible mishap so when chaos hits, they react with calm precision. Try this tonight. Pick one area of life where anxiety lingers: finances, relationships, career. Spend 3 minutes writing down the absolute worst outcome. Then ask, could I survive this? How? You'll often find your answer isn't just yes, but I'd adapt, innovate, or discover strengths I forgot I had. That's the Stoic secret. By staring down the darkness, you stop flinching at shadows, and when real storms come, you stand firm, not because they're small, but because you've grown larger. Negative visualization doesn't just steel you against hardship, it transforms ordinary moments into gifts. The morning coffee you rushed through becomes sweeter when you imagine a day without it. The laughter of a friend rings louder when you consider silence. This habit doesn't dwell on loss, it alchemizes loss into a lens for deeper presence. And that's how you build a presence that doesn't just weather storms, but finds meaning in the rain. Here's a truth that changes everything. You can't control the weather, but you can always choose your coat. That's the heart of the third Stoic habit, focusing relentlessly on what's within your power. The ancient Stoics called this the dichotomy of control, and it's not just an idea, it's a lifeline in a world that constantly tries to pull you into chaos. Picture this: two people stuck in the same traffic jam. One white-knuckles the steering wheel, fuming at red lights and slow drivers, arriving at work already exhausted. The other accepts the delay, uses the time to listen to an uplifting podcast, and steps out of the car with calm clarity. Same situation, entirely different experiences. What separates them isn't the traffic, it's their focus. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher born into slavery, put it bluntly: some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, these belong to you. External events, other people's opinions, even your own body's aging process, those aren't yours to command. Most suffering comes from blurring that line, from wasting energy trying to bend the world to your will instead of mastering your inner world. Think of the last time you stressed over a flight delay, a rude comment, or a sudden change of plans. Now ask, did worrying alter the outcome, or did it just drain you? This habit isn't about passivity, it's about precision. Start by drawing a mental circle. Inside it, write everything you directly control: your effort, your attitude, your boundaries, your breathing. Outside it, place the rest: stock markets, traffic, weather, other people's choices. When stress hits, pause and ask, which circle does this belong to? If it's outside, your job isn't to fix it, but to adjust your stance toward it. The Stoics weren't suggesting you ignore external problems. They were teaching you to meet them with unshakable agency where it counts. Try this exercise tonight. Reflect on 3 recent frustrations. For each, label whether it was within your control, like how you prepared for a meeting, or beyond it, like your boss's mood. Then, for the uncontrollable ones, write one way you could have shifted your focus inward, maybe by refining your communication skills or practicing patience. This simple act trains your brain to stop pouring energy into black holes and start investing it where it grows. The magic of this habit, it turns obstacles into gym equipment for your character. A missed promotion becomes a chance to refine your skills. A betrayal teaches you the value of your own integrity. Even grief, when met with this mindset, becomes a testament to your capacity to love deeply. That's the unshakable aura, not a life free of storms, but a spirit that learns to dance in the rain. Consider this: what if the secret to strength wasn't avoiding discomfort, but inviting it? The 4th Stoic habit flips modern comfort on its head, deliberately seeking hardship to forge an unbreakable mind. The Stoics didn't just tolerate discomfort, they practiced it like athletes training for a championship. Seneca, one of history's wealthiest philosophers, regularly slept on hard floors, wore threadbare clothing in winter, and fasted for days on end. Not because he had to, but because he chose to. He wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days to eat only the cheapest food, wear rough clothing, and ask yourself, is this what I used to fear?" This wasn't masochism. It was a masterclass in mental resilience. By voluntarily stepping into discomfort, the Stoics did 2 transformative things. First, they proved to themselves that hardship couldn't break them, making life's inevitable blows feel lighter by comparison. Second, they shattered the illusion that comfort equals happiness. Ever notice how a warm blanket feels best after coming in from the cold, or how water tastes sweeter when you're truly thirsty? The Stoics understood that joy isn't found in avoiding struggle, but in the contrast struggle creates. Musonius Rufus took this further, insisting physical austerity was essential training for the mind. He taught that luxuries soften us, while voluntary hardship like cold showers, hunger, or strenuous labor hardens resolve. Picture a soldier who trains in full gear so battle feels lighter, or a musician practicing scales until their fingers ache so performances flow effortlessly. The principle is universal. Exposure builds immunity. When you choose to walk upstairs instead of taking the elevator, or sit with boredom instead of reaching for your phone, you're not punishing yourself. You're rehearsing for life's bigger tests. Modern science backs this. Studies on cold exposure show it reduces stress hormones and boosts dopamine. Intermittent fasting sharpens focus and discipline. Even minor discomforts, holding a plank until your muscles shake, leaving your coat unzipped in chilly weather, train your brain to interpret signals differently. Discomfort stops being a threat and becomes a signal of growth. Start small. Next time you're hungry, wait 20 extra minutes before eating. Take the last 5 minutes of your shower cold. Carry groceries instead of using a cart. Each time you do, you're sending a message: I am not ruled by comfort. Over time, these micro-challenges reshape your relationship with adversity. Traffic jams become moments of patience. Work deadlines morph into opportunities for flow. Even pain, when met this way, loses its sharpest edges. The Stoics knew something we often forget. The more you try to cushion yourself from life, the thinner your skin becomes. But when you lean into friction, you don't just endure life, you command it. That's the power of this habit. It doesn't just prepare you for storms, it makes you the kind of person who doesn't need fair weather to thrive. There's a radical idea at the heart of Stoicism that most people miss. It's not enough to simply accept what life throws at you. You must love it. This is Amor, Fati, the 5th habit that transforms resilience into reverence. The phrase means love of fate, and it's more than a philosophy. It's a way of seeing the world that turns every setback into a setup for growth. Imagine standing in a downpour. You could curse the rain, or you could lift your face to it and remember how water shapes canyons. That's Amor Fati in action. Nietzsche, though not a Stoic, captured this perfectly. My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. The Stoics went further. Epictetus taught that every event carries the seed of opportunity if you're willing to look. When a shipwreck strands you on an island, you can mourn the lost voyage, or you can explore the beach for treasures. History's most unshakable figures lived this way. Take Thomas Edison, who watched his lab burn to the ground and calmly told his son, "There goes all our mistakes." By morning, he'd already secured funding to rebuild. This habit isn't about naive positivity. It's about recognizing that life's twists aren't obstacles to your path, they are the path. A job loss becomes space for reinvention. A broken heart deepens your capacity for connection. Even illness can teach patience and humility. The Stoics practiced this by reframing setbacks as training. When Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Try this reframe the next time life veers off script. Pause and ask, how could this unexpected turn serve me? Maybe a cancelled flight gives you hours to read. A disagreement sharpens your communication skills. By seeking the hidden gift in every situation, you stop resisting reality and start collaborating with it. That's when you'll notice something extraordinary. The less you fight what is, the more energy you have to shape what can be. Amor Fati isn't passive surrender, it's active partnership with the universe. When you stop wasting energy on why me and start asking what now, you unlock a rare kind of freedom. No longer at war with circumstance, you become like a sailor who doesn't control the wind but adjusts the sails and finds joy in the dance between storm and stillness. That's the unshakable aura, not a life without waves, but a soul that learns to love the ocean in all its moods. Here's a paradox that changes everything. The more you think about death, the more fully you learn to live. This is the sixth Stoic habit, Memento Mori, the art of remembering your mortality. Far from being morbid, this practice is a wake-up call to urgency, a mirror that reflects what truly matters. The ancient Stoics didn't shy away from this truth. They kept skulls on their desks, wore rings engraved with skeletons, and began each day whispering, "You could leave life right now." Not to scare themselves, but to strip away pettiness and focus on what's essential. Picture two versions of yourself. One drifts through days, assuming there's always tomorrow to mend relationships, chase dreams, or savor moments. The other lives with the sharp awareness that time is finite. Every conversation could be the last, every sunset a final gift. Which version makes better choices? Which one lingers at the dinner table, listens deeply, and takes bold risks? The Stoics understood this. Death isn't just an end, it's the ultimate accountability partner. When Steve Jobs stood at Stanford's commencement, he shared how being diagnosed with cancer made life crystal clear. "Remembering that I'll be dead soon," he said, "is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices." This habit isn't about fear, it's about freedom. Try this ritual. Place an object on your nightstand, a small skull replica, a withered leaf, even a stopped watch. Let it be your daily reminder. When you wake, ask, "If today were my last, what would I regret not doing?" Then do that first. When irritation flares over spilled coffee or traffic, touch the object and recalibrate. Is this how I'd spend my final hours? You'll find grudges dissolve, distractions fade, and love rushes to the surface. The modern world conspires to make us forget. We numb ourselves with endless scrolling, burying the truth under layers of busyness. But the Stoics knew that hiding from death doesn't postpone it. It only dilutes your life. Seneca wrote, "You act like mortals in all that you fear, and like immortals in all that you desire." Memento Mori shatters that illusion. It's the reason Buddhist monks meditate in cemeteries, why Mexican culture celebrates Dia de los Muertos with joy, and why the Roman general Scipio kept a skull in his tent during battles. Start small. Set a phone wallpaper with the words, "You will die," not to depress you but to direct you. or borrow Marcus Aurelius's nightly practice, review your day as if it were your last. Did you live with integrity? Did you withhold love? Did you waste time on what wouldn't matter at life's end? Over time, this habit reshapes your priorities like water shapes stone, slowly, irreversibly. The trivial falls away, courage feels easier because regret feels heavier, and when you face actual loss, a friend's illness, your own aging, you don't collapse. You've already befriended the truth that everything is borrowed. The irony, embracing mortality doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. When you stop pretending you have forever, you start living like you mean it. That's the alchemy of Memento Mori. It turns the shadow of death into the light by which you see everything else. And in that light, an unshakable aura isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Think about the last conversation you had that left you feeling drained. Chances are it was filled with complaints, gossip, or words spoken just to fill silence. Now contrast that with a conversation where every sentence carried weight, where you walked away feeling heard, understood, or inspired. That's the power of the seventh Stoic habit, speaking with purpose. The ancient Stoics saw speech not as a reflex but as a sacred responsibility. Epictetus put it bluntly, "You have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that you listen twice as much as you speak." This isn't about becoming silent or stoic in the modern sense of the word. It's about elevating your words to match your values. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journals, "Ask yourself, does this need to be said?" By me now, 3 simple questions that cut through the noise. Imagine applying this filter to your next meeting, text thread, or casual chat. How much of what you'd normally say would survive that scrutiny? The Stoics warned against 3 speech traps especially. First, gossip, that addictive habit of discussing others' flaws to feel superior. Seneca called it the amusement of the weak, because tearing others down never actually builds you up. Second, complaining, not the kind that sparks change, but the mindless venting that reinforces victimhood. When you narrate your hardships with, "This always happens to me," instead of, "What can I learn from this?" You're not just describing pain, you're amplifying it. Third, excessive talking. Zeno, founder of Stoicism, taught that words are like coins, spend them recklessly, and you'll soon go bankrupt in credibility. History's most respected leaders mastered this. George Washington's contemporaries noted his rare ability to hold a room's attention with few words. Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address lasted 2 minutes yet reshaped a nation. Their power didn't come from volume, it came from precision. When you speak less, people lean in. When you avoid gossip, you radiate trust. When complaints give way to solutions, you become the calm in the storm. Try this today. Carry a small notebook. Each time you're about to speak, pause and mentally categorize your words. Are they necessary? Are they kind? Are they true? If they don't clear all 3 hurdles, let them pass. You'll notice 2 things. First, how much unnecessary drama evaporates when you stop feeding it. Second, how people start listening differently when your words consistently carry substance. The magic of this habit isn't just in what it removes, it's in what it creates. Space for deeper listening, time for sharper thinking, a reputation for integrity that precedes you. Your words become like a craftsman's tools, used intentionally, not carelessly. And that's how an unshakable aura sounds, not in constant noise, but in chosen silence punctuated by meaning. Imagine walking into your home and seeing only what serves you, no clutter, no distractions, just space for what truly matters. That's the essence of the 8th Stoic habit, voluntary simplicity. The Stoics weren't just philosophers, they were pioneers of minimalism long before it became a lifestyle trend. Seneca, who could afford any luxury, famously wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." He slept on a thin mattress, owned a single set of dishes, and traveled light even as Rome's wealthiest advisor. Why? Because he knew every possession carries hidden costs, mental bandwidth, maintenance, and the quiet stress of managing things instead of living. This isn't about deprivation. It's about liberation. Modern research confirms what the Stoics practiced. Clutter competes for your attention like background apps draining a phone's battery. A study from Princeton University found visual chaos reduces focus while sparse environments sharpen it. Think of voluntary simplicity as decluttering your life's operating system. Digital detoxes, capsule wardrobes, and tiny house movements are all modern echoes of Stoic wisdom. When you strip away the non-essential, you're left with room to breathe, think, and grow. Consider the tech CEO who wears the same black turtleneck daily, not from lack of creativity, but to preserve decision-making energy for what truly matters. Or the artist who limits social media to 2 hours a week, guarding the mental space her craft requires. These aren't sacrifices, they're strategic choices. The Stoics called this ascesis discipline, training to strengthen what's within you, not what surrounds you. Start small. Open your closet and ask of each item, does this align with who I am becoming? Not just physically, does your Netflix queue nourish your mind or numb it? Do your subscriptions expand your life or shrink your bank account? The goal isn't empty shelves, it's curated space for what aligns with your virtues. Try a one-in, one-out rule. For every new possession, release an old one. Or designate a simplicity hour. Each week, delete unused apps, cancel auto-renewals, donate what's gathering dust. The beauty of this habit, it ripples outward. As material noise fades, you'll notice subtler distractions, the compulsion to check likes, the itch to compare, the hollow pull of more. And here's the paradox, the less you need externally, the more unshakable you become internally. That's the Stoic secret. Voluntary simplicity isn't about having little, it's about needing little. And when you need little, you fear less, choose clearer, and stand taller because your worth isn't tied to what you own, but to who you've built beneath the surface. There's a quiet power in closing the day with intention, not just letting it fade into the background like a forgotten song, but examining it with the precision of an archaeologist sifting through fragments of time. This is the 9th Stoic habit, the evening review, a practice the ancients called hyponemata. Picture Marcus Aurelius, candlelight flickering as he penned his private meditations, dissecting his own behavior with ruthless honesty. When you have done a good act, another cries out, "How can you claim this was good, but it's enough for me to have done it?" Like the rose that has bloomed, even if no one sees it, it stops not in its being. This isn't about tallying wins and losses like some corporate performance review. It's deeper, a forensic examination of your alignment with virtue. The Stoics divided this ritual into 3 piercing questions. Where did I act with courage today? Where did fear or comfort hold me back? How can I live more fully in accordance with my principles tomorrow? Imagine a courtroom where you're both defendant and judge, dissecting moments most would ignore. That awkward silence when you avoided speaking truth to a friend. The extra hour wasted scrolling when you promised yourself focused work. The fleeting kindness you almost dismissed as insignificant. Epictetus offered a template for this practice. First, revisit key interactions, not just what happened, but your role in them. Did you listen fully or just wait for your turn to talk? Next, examine your reactions. When traffic snarled or plans collapsed, did you respond with patience or petulance? Finally, spotlight one moment where you could have risen higher. Seneca did this nightly, writing, "I audit myself and demand an accounting of my day, not to dwell in regret but to refine." Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that structured reflection boosts emotional intelligence and decision-making. Athletes review game footage to spot microscopic flaws. Surgeons conduct death reviews to prevent future errors. The evening review is your personal debrief, a way to transform lived experience into wisdom. Try this tonight. Light a candle or brew tea. Create a tactile ritual to mark the transition from day to reflection. Grab a journal and divide the page into 3 columns. In the first, note moments you lived your values, the hard conversation you initiated, the temptation you resisted. In the second, record missteps, snapping at a loved one, procrastinating on a promise. In the third, write one tiny adjustment for tomorrow, pause before reacting, leave your phone in another room during deep work. Keep it concrete. The goal isn't self-flagellation, it's recalibration. There's a reason this habit endures across centuries. Without reflection, days blur into years and we risk sleepwalking through our own lives. But when you end each day with honest examination, you don't just have experiences, you integrate them. Over time, this practice builds something rare, a life where every sunset isn't an ending but a stepping stone toward your highest self. Life has a way of handing us stones when we ask for bread, but what if those stones could become the very tools to build something greater? This is the 10th Stoic habit, transforming obstacles into opportunities, a practice the ancients called turning the impediment upside down. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during plague, war, and betrayal, wrote in his private journal, "The obstacle is the way," 4 words that hold the key to an unshakable mindset. He didn't just endure hardships, he leveraged them, treating each challenge as a whetstone to sharpen his character. Consider the year 169 when a devastating plague swept through Rome. While others panicked, Marcus used the crisis to refine his leadership, personally visiting the sick, reorganizing supply lines, and composing philosophical meditations amid the chaos. To him, the plague wasn't merely a tragedy, it was a chance to practice courage, compassion, and ingenuity. Fast forward 2 millennia, and you'll find the same principle in action when Nelson Mandela transformed 27 years of imprisonment into a masterclass in forgiveness and political strategy. The common thread: neither man denied their suffering, they redeemed it by asking one radical question: how can this serve my growth? The Stoics didn't view obstacles as roadblocks, they saw them as detours pointing toward hidden paths. Take Epictetus, born into slavery and crippled by a brutal master. Instead of resigning himself to victimhood, he framed his physical limitations as an advantage. Lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. His disability forced him to develop mental strength early, ultimately making him one of history's most influential teachers. This habit isn't about toxic positivity, it's about strategic reframing. When a project fails, it becomes a lesson in resilience. When someone betrays you, they gift you clarity about true loyalties. Even physical pain can teach presence, as Seneca discovered when chronic illness sharpened his appreciation for simple comforts. Modern psychology confirms this ancient wisdom. Post-traumatic growth research shows that adversity often sparks creativity, deeper relationships, and renewed purpose, but only when we engage with it actively. Think of a blacksmith's forge. Fire that could destroy metal is the same force that tempers it into something unbreakable. The difference lies in how the material meets the flame. Try this reframe the next time you hit a wall. Pause and list 3 ways this obstacle could serve you. Maybe a rejection frees you for a better opportunity. A financial setback forces inventive budgeting. A conflict teaches diplomatic skills. Write them down not as platitudes but as actionable insights. Then, take one small step to activate that potential. The moment you shift from "why is this happening to me" to "what can this reveal about me," you cease being a passenger in your life and become its architect. History's most resilient figures share this trait. They don't avoid storms, they learn to sail in them. Thomas Edison's lab burned down. "Thank goodness all our mistakes are gone," he said, rebuilding from scratch. Beethoven going deaf, he composed his greatest symphonies by feeling vibrations through the piano. The pattern is clear: what breaks one person becomes another's breakthrough. That's the power of this habit. It doesn't remove obstacles, it removes their power to stop you. And when you consistently meet challenges this way, you develop an aura that doesn't just withstand chaos, it thrives because of it. Imagine standing in front of 2 mirrors. One reflects the cheers of a crowd, the other the jeers of critics. Most people spend their lives frantically adjusting themselves to chase the first reflection and flee the second. But the Stoics stepped off that treadmill entirely. This is the 11th habit, cultivating indifference to both praise and criticism, not through arrogance, but through an unshakable understanding that your worth was never up for debate in the first place. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, wrote reminders to himself like, "It's ridiculous not to escape from your own vices, which is possible, while trying to escape the vices of others, which is impossible." He knew that pinning his self-worth on others' opinions was like building a house on shifting sand. The crowd's applause today could become tomorrow's scorn, and basing your identity on either is equally precarious. The Stoics called this adiaphora things neither good nor bad in themselves, including the fleeting judgments of others. Consider the sculptor chiseling a statue. If she paused every time a passerby shouted, "Too tall," or "The nose is wrong," the work would never cohere. Yet this is precisely what we do when we let external voices, whether flattery or condemnation, dictate our inner narrative. Epictetus, born a slave, put it sharply, "If someone told you that others were speaking ill of you, wouldn't you defend yourself? Then why do you act as if you're injured when someone actually says it?" His point, criticism only stings if you've already agreed with it on some level. Building this muscle starts with a simple but profound shift, separating facts from interpretations. When someone says your work is lazy, that's their interpretation. The fact might be, "I spent fewer hours on this project than usual." One invites shame, the other invites clarity. Try this exercise for the next week. Keep a ledger. In one column, record instances of praise or criticism you receive. In a second column, rewrite each as a neutral observation. "You're brilliant" becomes, "They appreciated my solution." "This is terrible" becomes, "They disliked one aspect." Over time, you'll catch yourself hearing evaluations as data rather than verdicts. Another practice comes from Seneca, who advised pre-rehearsing insults. Each morning, mentally play out hearing, "You're incompetent" or "Nobody likes you." Feel the initial sting, then respond inwardly. "If that's true, I'll improve. If false, why should I care?" This isn't pessimism, it's emotional inoculation. Like a vaccine, introducing a tiny virus to build immunity, you're teaching your nervous system not to overreact. History offers striking examples when sent. Augustine published his Confessions, a raw account of his past sins. Critics called it shameless. His response, "What does it matter if the vessel is mocked, so long as the treasure inside is preserved?" Michelangelo faced constant interference from Pope Julius Roman II while painting the Sistine Chapel. Rather than resenting the critiques, he used them to refine his art, later noting, "Critique from a wise enemy is better than the thoughtless praise of friends." Modern psychology affirms this approach. Studies on self-determination theory show that people who derive motivation from internal values rather than external rewards exhibit greater creativity, persistence, and well-being. The moment you stop outsourcing your self-assessment, you reclaim something precious, the right to define yourself. This habit doesn't mean ignoring feedback or becoming emotionless. It means developing a filter. Ask, is this person qualified to judge? Is their intent constructive? Does this align with my own standards? If yes, learn. If no, let it pass like background noise. The goal isn't to silence the world's voices, but to turn down their volume so you can hear your own compass more clearly. There's a quiet confidence in those who have mastered this. They don't bristle at insults or hunger for accolades. Their sense of worth comes from living by their principles, not the ever-shifting opinions of others. And that's the foundation of a truly unshakable aura, the realization that you were never on trial in the first place. Ever notice how the most composed people seem to have an invisible buffer between what happens to them and how they respond? That split second where they don't flinch at bad news, snap at provocation, or crumble under pressure isn't luck. It's the 12th Stoic habit, the deliberate pause. The Stoics called this prosach, attention to your inner workings. but you might think of it as installing a mental circuit breaker between stimulus and reaction. Picture two scenarios. Someone cuts you off in traffic and your blood boils instantly, or your partner says something careless and words fly out before you've even processed them. Now imagine inserting a breath, a beat, a moment where you reclaim authority over what happens next. That's the pause in action. Epictetus, who knew a thing or two about keeping cool under pressure, having been a slave under a notoriously cruel master, framed it like this: it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Between the event and the judgment lies the pause, your leverage point. Ancient warriors used this. Roman generals would consciously slow their breathing before battle decisions. Samurai practiced hara, centering themselves in the gut before drawing swords. Even modern neuroscience confirms this. When you interrupt the amygdala's panic loop with just 6 seconds of deep breathing, cortisol drops and prefrontal cortex engagement rises. You're literally switching from reactive lizard brain to rational human brain. But how do you cultivate this pause when emotions hijack your system? Start with the body. Try the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 7, exhale for 8. It's not just relaxation, it's a physiological override button. Or borrow the Stoic distancing move, mentally stepping back like a spectator observing your own reaction. Marcus Aurelius visualized himself as a rock against crashing waves. The wave dissolves, the rock stands firm. Then there's the 10-second rule. When insulted or provoked, count slowly to 10 before speaking, not to suppress emotions, but to meet them with awareness. In that space, ask 3 questions. Is this reaction proportional? Will this matter in a month? What would my best self do now? Seneca wrote letters recounting how he'd walk away from arguments to cool down, sometimes for days, knowing heated words become regrets. The magic of this habit, it's not about eliminating emotions, it's about relating to them differently. Anger becomes information, not identity. Fear transforms into caution, not paralysis. Even grief gets room to breathe without drowning you. Over time, the pause stops being something you do and starts being who you are, someone who responds rather than reacts, who meets chaos with calm because they've practiced the art of the space between. And that's when people start noticing there's something unshakable about you, not because nothing affects you, but because you've mastered what happens next. There's a reason the greatest Stoics carried their scrolls like swords, because wisdom isn't inherited, it's conquered daily. This 13th habit isn't about casual reading. It's about treating philosophy like mental calisthenics, strengthening your mind's resilience 1 page at a time. Think of Marcus Aurelius, who penned Meditations not as a treatise for others, but as battlefield notes to himself during military campaigns. Or Seneca, who wrote letters to Lucilius not just to teach, but to remind himself of truths too easily forgotten in the rush of life. Start with the classics: Meditations, letters from a Stoic, Epictetus discourses, but approach them differently. These aren't books to breeze through, they're mirrors to interrogate. Read a single paragraph each morning, then sit with it like a sourdough starter, letting it ferment in your mind. Ask, where did I live this yesterday? Where might I need it today? Modern translations like Gregory Hayes' Meditations or Robin Waterfield's Epictetus strip away archaic language, making the ideas pulse with fresh urgency. But wisdom isn't confined to ancient texts. Pair the classics with contemporary voices that bridge the gap between Stoa and smartphone. Ryan Holiday's The Obstacle is the way turns Stoic principles into entrepreneurial fuel. Podcasts like The Daily Stoic or Stoic Coffee Break deliver bite-sized reflections for commutes. Even fiction can deepen your practice. Tolstoy's The Death of Ivan Ilyich is a masterclass in Memento Mori, while Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl shows Stoicism in the crucible of Auschwitz. The key is consistency, not volume. 10 minutes daily beats a weekend binge. Create rituals, highlight one quote in your planner, discuss it over dinner, or journal how it applies to a current challenge. Seneca warned, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." Scattergun reading fills notebooks, focused study rewires neural pathways. Treat wisdom like a vitamin. Small daily doses compound into unshakable immunity against life's chaos. History's most centered minds shared this habit. Frederick the Great carried Epictetus on military campaigns. George Washington had plays about Cotto performed for his troops. They didn't wait for crisis to seek wisdom, they marinated in it daily, so when storms hit, their responses were reflexes. That's the power of this practice. It doesn't just fill your mind, it fortifies it. And over time, you'll notice something extraordinary. The voices of Seneca, Epictetus, and Aurelius don't just speak to you, they sound like you because their wisdom has become yours. The most resilient people don't wait for perfect conditions to feel thankful. They find reasons to be grateful even in the storm. This is the 14th Stoic habit, the daily practice of gratitude, not as a fluffy self-help trick, but as a deliberate rewiring of perception. Modern positive psychology touts gratitude journals as a happiness booster, but the Stoics were doing this 2,000 years earlier with a crucial difference. They didn't just count blessings, they interrogated them. Marcus Aurelius didn't simply write, "I'm grateful for my health." He drilled deeper, "What if I lost this tomorrow? How would I remember it?" That twist, imagining life without what you cherish, transforms appreciation from passive to profound. Science now backs what the Stoics intuited. Studies from UC Davis show regular gratitude practice reduces cortisol by 23% and boosts empathy without weakening resilience. But here's where Stoicism goes further. It pairs gratitude with Amor Fati, loving whatever life brings, even the harsh lessons. Seneca's letters reveal this brilliantly. Exiled to Corsica under brutal conditions, he wrote, "This place that others pity has taught me how little one needs to be happy." His gratitude wasn't for the exile itself, but for the strength it revealed in him. That's the Stoic edge, finding gold not just in the sunshine, but in the dirt where you're forced to dig. Try this tonight. Grab a notebook and divide your page into 3 columns. In the first, list concrete gifts: hot coffee this morning, a friend's unexpected text. In the second, note challenges you're reframing as teachers. The delayed flight gave me time to read. The criticism highlighted where I can grow. In the third, practice negative visualization. If I lost this person or privilege today, what would I miss most? This triplet approach, appreciation, alchemy, and absence, builds what psychologists call psychological flexibility, the ability to hold joy and hardship simultaneously without crumbling. History's unshakable figures shared this habit. Frederick the Great wrote thank you notes to enemies who'd betrayed him, crediting them for his vigilance. Eleanor Roosevelt kept a gratitude in adversity diary during her husband's presidency, noting how public scrutiny refined her character, their secret. They didn't use gratitude to ignore pain, they used it to metabolize pain into wisdom. The modern world often treats gratitude as a finish line. I'll be thankful when I get the promotion/partner/peace. Stoicism flips this. Gratitude becomes the fuel for the journey, not the reward at the end. Rain on your picnic isn't ruining your day, it's offering a chance to laugh at plans gone awry. A drained phone battery isn't an inconvenience, it's an enforced pause to notice the sunset. This habit doesn't just brighten your mood, it builds an unshakable core, one where thankfulness isn't dependent on circumstances, but on your unwavering choice to find the gift in every grain of life. Complaining is like breathing bad air. It's easy to do without noticing, but over time it poisons everything around you. The 15th Stoic habit confronts this head-on. Limit complaints not through sheer willpower, but by rewiring how you see the world itself. Epictetus, who endured slavery and exile, laid down a radical challenge. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. What if you tried that today, not just avoiding complaints, but detecting them like a scientist spotting invisible toxins in the air? Start with a simple experiment, the no complaint day, but here's the twist. It's not about biting your tongue when the coffee spills or the train delays. It's about uncovering the silent complaints hiding in phrases like, I have to, shift it to, I get to. This always happens, ask, does it really? Or even, I'm exhausted, try, I'm being stretched. These aren't word games, they're perspective shifts. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, the world is change, life is opinion, he was pointing to this exact lever. Your interpretations shape your reality far more than events themselves. Modern research reveals why this works. Stanford studies show habitual complaining reinforces neural pathways for negativity, literally training your brain to seek out frustration. But when you interrupt those loops, something remarkable happens. Problems start looking like puzzles instead of punishments. Take the Stoic entrepreneur who reframes, my client is being difficult, to, this is teaching me patience and clearer communication. Or the parent who swaps, my kids never listen, for I'm learning to model calm authority. The situation hasn't changed, but their power within it has. Epictetus didn't just teach this, he lived it. Crippled by a cruel master in youth, he could have defined himself by that injustice. Instead, he famously said, lameness is an impediment to the leg, but not to the will. His refusal to complain about what couldn't be changed became the foundation for his legendary resilience. This habit isn't about suppressing emotions, it's about redirecting energy from futile venting to purposeful action. Try this today. Wear a bracelet or place a coin in your pocket as a physical reminder. Each time you catch yourself complaining, even internally, shift the item to your other wrist or pocket, then reframe the thought. By sunset, you'll have two discoveries. First, how often complaints masquerade as neutral observations. Second, how much lighter you feel when you stop carrying the weight of grievances you can't control. The ultimate test, apply this to self-complaints. I'm so bad at this becomes I'm in the growth phase. Why can't I get it together? Transforms into what's one small step forward. Here's the secret Epictetus knew. When you stop complaining about yourself, you stop needing others to approve of you. And that's when an unshakable aura truly takes root, not because life gets easier, but because you've mastered the art of turning grit into grace. Your body isn't just a vessel, it's the first instrument of your will. That's the heart of the 16th Stoic habit, physical discipline as philosophy in motion. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who rivaled Epictetus in influence, put it bluntly, how can a mind that is enslaved to the body be free? He didn't mean to punish the flesh, but to forge it into an ally. Picture the Roman legionnaire marching 30 miles in full gear, not because war demanded it that day, but because preparedness did. Or the modern executive who treats cold showers and pre-dawn, runs not as self-help trends, but as daily rehearsals for life's unpredictability. This habit isn't about six-pack abs or marathon times. It's about integrity between mind and muscle. The Stoics saw physical training as a mirror for mental fortitude. When you hold a plank until your core trembles, you're not just building abdominal strength. You're practicing the art of enduring discomfort without surrender. When you correct slouched posture, you're not just aligning your spine, you're embodying the literal backbone of resilience. Marcus Aurelius, despite chronic illness, trained in wrestling and boxing, writing, the art of living is more like wrestling than dancing because it requires standing firm against sudden and unexpected attacks. Modern science validates this ancient link. Studies show that physical endurance increases gray matter in brain regions governing emotional regulation. Harvard research reveals that upright posture reduces cortisol and boosts confidence hormones. Even the simple act of slowing your breath during stress mirrors the Stoic pause, physiology reinforcing philosophy. Consider the rituals of history's unshakable figures. Theodore Roosevelt's brutal wilderness treks weren't machismo. They were ascesis, the Stoic practice of voluntary hardship. He wrote, "Black care rarely sits behind a rider whose pace is fast enough." Buddhist monks walk meditation labyrinths to ground enlightenment in motion. Nietzsche, influenced by Stoicism, declared, "All truly great thoughts are conceived while walking. Start small but intentional. Swap convenience for cultivation, take stairs instead of elevators, carry groceries instead of using carts." Try the Stoic mile, walk daily with a single meditation like "What's essential?" or "Where am I resisting growth?" Notice how movement untangles mental knots. Or borrow Musonius's practice, alternate days of physical intensity, sprints, weight training with days of restraint, fasting, silence. The pattern teaches balance, strength without aggression, discipline without rigidity. The deeper truth: your body keeps score. Every time you choose discomfort over complacency, you're voting for the person you're becoming. Epictetus, born with a lame leg, still insisted, "First say what you would be, then do what you have to do." Physical discipline is that declaration made flesh-proof that your philosophy isn't just something you think, but something you live. And when your outer strength reflects your inner resolve, that's when people sense it, an aura built not on words but on the quiet authority of aligned action. Imagine carrying a compass that never points north but always toward your highest self. That's the power of the 17th Stoic habit, defining your virtues so clearly they become embedded in your bones. The Stoics didn't just admire qualities like courage and justice from afar. They turned them into daily measuring sticks. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, essentially his private journal, wasn't filled with abstract musings. On nearly every page, he interrogated himself. Have I acted with integrity today? Did I meet anger with understanding? Was my patience stronger than my pride? This wasn't self-help, it was self-auditing of the highest order. Start with the 4 cardinal virtues the Stoics revered: wisdom, seeing reality clearly; courage, acting despite fear; justice, treating others fairly; and temperance, mastering desires. But here's the key: they're not slogans to nod at, they're lenses to scrutinize your choices. When faced with a tough decision, the Stoic doesn't ask what's easiest, but what aligns with my virtues. Consider a modern example. You discover a coworker took credit for your idea. The impulsive reaction might be outrage or gossip. But if justice is one of your defined virtues, your response shifts perhaps to a calm, factual conversation with your manager. The virtue doesn't dictate the action, it elevates it. Marcus Aurelius modeled this under crushing pressure. As emperor, he faced wars, plagues, and betrayals, yet his journal shows him constantly circling back to virtues like fairness and restraint. One entry reads, "When you wake reluctant to rise, remember, I'm rising to do the work of a human being." That simple phrase reframed his entire day, not as a series of tasks but as opportunities to embody his principles. Try this exercise tonight. Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 4 sections, one for each cardinal virtue. Under each, write 3 concrete behaviors that bring it to life. For courage, it might be speak up in meetings even when my voice shakes. For temperance, pause before purchasing non-essentials. Then, tape this sheet where you'll see it daily: your bathroom mirror, laptop lid, or car dashboard. The goal isn't perfection, it's progression. As Epictetus taught, first tell yourself what kind of person you want to be, then do what you have to do. The brilliance of this habit lies in its simplicity. Virtues act as filters, screening out impulsive reactions and letting through only what aligns with who you aspire to be. Over time, this practice does something extraordinary. It externalizes your conscience. The athlete doesn't cheat because it violates their discipline. The leader doesn't exploit because it betrays their justice. And when you face life's gray areas, those moments where shortcuts tempt you, your defined virtues become the guardrails that keep you centered. That's how an unshakable aura is built, not by never wavering, but by knowing exactly what to hold onto when the ground shakes beneath you. Here's a truth that stings at first but liberates in the end. The only person you're truly competing with is yesterday's version of yourself. That's the essence of the 18th Stoic habit, breaking free from the comparison trap by cultivating indifference to others' status, opinions, and apparent successes. Imagine two neighbors, one constantly measuring his car, salary, and social media likes against others, trapped in a cycle of envy and insecurity. The other focuses inward, asking only, "Am I better today than I was before?" The first lives on a treadmill of endless dissatisfaction. The second builds an unshakable foundation of self-defined worth. The Stoics called this autarkeia, self-sufficiency, rooted not in arrogance, but in the deep understanding that external markers are illusions. Epictetus, born into slavery, had little material wealth to compare, yet he taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." Fast forward to today's highlight reel culture, where social media has turned comparison into a full-time job. The average person spends over 2 hours daily scrolling through curated versions of others' lives, fertile ground for what psychologists call reference anxiety, the distress of measuring yourself against distorted benchmarks. This habit isn't about deleting Instagram, though periodic detoxes help. It's about recalibrating your focus. Start with a simple experiment for 1 week. Track how often you mentally compare yourself to others. Not just overt, "they're doing better than me" thoughts, but subtle ones, admiring someone's vacation photos while downplaying your own achievements, or feeling a pang when a colleague gets praised. Then apply the Stoic 3-question filter. Is this comparison based on facts or assumptions? Does it serve my growth? Would this person's opinion matter on my deathbed? You'll quickly spot the absurdity of letting strangers' curated moments dictate your self-worth. History's most centered minds practiced this indifference. Diogenes, the philosopher who lived in a barrel, famously shrugged when Alexander the Great offered him anything he desired, replying, "Step aside, you're blocking my sunlight." His freedom came not from having nothing, but from needing nothing external to validate his existence. Seneca warned his students, "To wish to be well thought of by those you despise is insanity." Modern research underscores the cost of comparison. Studies show frequent social media use correlates with increased depression and decreased self-esteem, not because others are happier, but because our brains struggle to distinguish between curated feeds and reality. The solution: practice digital stoicism. Try a view-only week. Scroll without reacting, no likes, no comments, no internal scoring. Notice how quickly the illusion of importance fades when you stop participating in the game. Or borrow Marcus Aurelius's journaling prompt. What's one thing I improved today that no one else might notice? Celebrate the quiet wins, choosing patience in traffic, resisting gossip, finishing a book instead of binge watching. The deepest freedom comes when you realize no one's life is as flawless as it appears, and no achievement fills the void of self-doubt for long. The billionaire still checks his stock portfolio. The celebrity still reads her reviews. The Stoic alternative: define your own metrics. Is your yardstick kindness over clout, integrity over influence? Then suddenly, the race you thought you were running vanishes, and you're left walking your own path at your own pace, unshaken by others' applause or absence. That's the paradox. When you stop comparing, you start living, and that's an aura no algorithm can replicate. The river doesn't resist the changing seasons. It expands in spring rains and narrows in summer heat, never clinging to any single form. That's the heart of the 19th Stoic habit, embracing impermanence not as a threat but as the natural rhythm of existence. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the interconnected flow of all things, and they saw it as the ultimate antidote to the anxiety of loss. Consider how a tree sheds leaves without protest each autumn, trusting they'll return in time, or how waves neither mourn their crash upon the shore nor cling to the ones that follow. Nature's wisdom lies in its surrender to cycles, and the moment we stop resisting this truth, we unlock a profound kind of peace. Marcus Aurelius scribbled reminders to himself like, "Soon you'll be ashes or bones, just like all those you envy or despise today." Not to depress himself, but to anchor in reality. The emperor knew his power, wealth, and even his body were temporary guests, a perspective that freed him from the desperation to control what couldn't be held. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies on impermanence awareness show that people who regularly reflect on life's transience experience less materialism and sharper focus on meaningful relationships. The paradox, accepting that everything fades, makes the present moment shine brighter. Try this reframe next time change unsettles you. Visualize the situation a year from now. That tense family gathering, the job uncertainty, the aching heart, how much will they matter in 5 years, 10? The Stoics practiced this temporal expansion, zooming out until petty worries shrank to their true size. Epictetus took it further, advising his students to handle fragile objects as if they were already broken. When you kiss your child or spouse, he said, remember you're kissing a mortal. This wasn't morbid, it was a recipe for deeper presence. By acknowledging the temporary, we stop taking people and moments for granted. History's most resilient figures shared this habit. Japanese samurai composed death poems to greet each day as if it were their last. The Vikings toasted "Skål," literally to the shell, a reminder that life, like a drinking vessel, could shatter at any moment. Even modern hospice workers report that patients who have made peace with impermanence often experience unexpected joy in their final days, laughing more, loving more, freed from trivial concerns. Start small. Each morning, hold your coffee cup and think, this will one day break or be lost. Savor its warmth more intensely. When stress about the future flares, whisper Seneca's line, all things that rise must fall. Over time, you'll notice a shift, less panic over changing plans, less desperation to freeze happy moments, and a new ability to flow with life's currents rather than thrash against them. That's the gift of this practice. It doesn't remove life's uncertainties, it removes their power to unsteady you. And when you stop fearing the tide, you learn to ride its waves with unshakable grace. True power doesn't come from what you say, but from the unbroken alignment between your words and actions. This is the 20th Stoic habit, acting with such unwavering integrity that your very presence carries weight before you even speak. The Stoics didn't see integrity as a moral luxury. They saw it as the backbone of an unshakable character. Picture two leaders. One delivers rousing speeches but cuts corners behind closed doors. The other speaks softly but follows through with exacting consistency. Over time, the first loses credibility no matter how charismatic they are, while the second commands quiet respect that can't be manufactured. That's the alchemy of integrity. It transforms ordinary actions into unspoken authority. Marcus Aurelius modeled this daily. As emperor, he could have exploited power for personal gain, yet his private journals reveal a man who held himself to higher standards than his subjects demanded. One entry reads, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. No grand pronouncements, no virtue signaling, just the relentless pursuit of congruence between belief and behavior." The Stoics called this synkatathesis, the discipline of full assent, meaning your yes means yes, and your no means no without exception. When you live this way, people stop questioning your motives because your track record speaks for itself. History's most trusted figures shared this trait. George Washington's contemporaries noted his peculiar habit of returning borrowed books promptly, a small act that reflected a larger pattern. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison without compromising his principles, emerging with a moral authority that transcended politics. Their power didn't come from titles or talent alone. It came from the cumulative weight of countless choices where they could have cut corners but didn't. Modern psychology confirms why integrity radiates so visibly. Studies on cognitive dissonance show that when our actions contradict our stated values, we experience subconscious stress, leaking tension through microexpressions and body language. Conversely, alignment between words and deeds creates what researchers call authentic presence, a state where your nonverbal cues broadcast consistency. That's why people with deep integrity often seem grounded. They're not wasting energy masking discrepancies between what they profess and how they live. Cultivating this starts with micro-integrity. Most people focus on grand gestures, "I'd never embezzle," while overlooking the small fractures, arriving fashionably late, exaggerating stories for laughs, or making promises they only half intend to keep. The Stoics practiced the opposite. Epictetus taught his students, "If you've acted honorably in some small matter, delight in it, for the habit grows." Try this today. Audit your harmless white lies, the commitments you downgrade in priority, or the times you say, "I'll try," when you mean no. Each time you align speech with action, even in trivialities like texting back when promised or admitting you forgot a task, you're depositing trust into your character's bank account. The ultimate test: integrity when no one's watching. Seneca wrote, "What does it profit you to be approved by those who aren't worthy of approving you?" Imagine you find a wallet stuffed with cash. Do your ethics hinge on whether surveillance cameras are present? The Stoic answer: true integrity means acting the same way in darkness as in spotlight, because the only audience that matters is your own conscience. That's when integrity stops being a performance and becomes your essence. Over time, this habit does something extraordinary. It simplifies decision-making. When your choices flow from core principles rather than shifting circumstances, you spend less mental energy weighing options. The path forward becomes obvious because you've already decided who you are. And that's the secret behind history's most unshakable figures. They weren't perfect, but they were predictable, not in behavior, but in devotion to their code. In a world of influencers and image crafting, that kind of consistency stands out like a torch in fog. People may forget your words, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And nothing feels more solid than standing near someone whose outer life mirrors their inner truth. The most unshakable people aren't those who build walls, they're the ones who see through them. This 21st Stoic habit shatters a common misconception that Stoicism is about cold detachment. In truth, the practice of empathy sits at philosophy's core, not as emotional indulgence, but as a disciplined exercise in widening perspective. The Stoics called this the view from above, a mental technique where you zoom out from your immediate frustrations to see the bigger human picture. Picture yourself hovering over your city like a bird. From this vantage point, that coworker who snapped at you isn't just an irritant, there's someone carrying invisible burdens. The stranger who cut you off in traffic becomes part of a vast web of stressed commuters. This isn't about excusing poor behavior. It's about understanding its roots so you can respond with clarity rather than react with bitterness. Marcus Aurelius perfected this practice while ruling an empire. Amidst political betrayals and battlefield decisions, he wrote reminders like, "When someone offends you, ask yourself, what is their vision of good and evil?" Once you understand that, you'll pity them rather than feel anger. That shift from judgment to curiosity is the essence of Stoic empathy. Ancient generals used this to lead diverse armies. Modern CEOs apply it to navigate team conflicts. When you grasp that everyone acts from their own tangled mix of fears and desires, personal slights lose their sting. The view from above isn't the only tool. The Stoics also practiced role reversal, deliberately stepping into others' shoes before passing judgment. Seneca advised, "Consider that the person you're angry with probably thinks they're right just as you do." Try this next time tension flares. Pause and silently ask, "What would I need to believe to act as they did?" You might still disagree, but you'll likely uncover a misunderstanding rather than malice. Epictetus took it further, urging students to treat difficult people as sparring partners for virtue. The abrasive person doesn't harm you by acting that way, they help you practice patience. Science now confirms what the Stoics intuited. Brain scans show that practicing empathy activates neural pathways linked to problem solving while dampening the amygdala's threat response. Leaders who cultivate this skill foster psychological safety, sparking higher team creativity and loyalty. Even in personal relationships, empathy acts as an emotional lubricant, not by avoiding conflict, but by ensuring disagreements refine bonds rather than fracture them. Start small. When irritated today, mentally draft that person's hidden resume of the struggles, insecurities, or wounds that might drive their behavior. The single parent working late might seem aloof until you imagine their exhaustion. The snippy cashier could be grieving a loss. This habit isn't about becoming a doormat. It's about developing the discernment to separate people's actions from their humanity. Over time, you'll notice something profound. The more you extend this grace to others, the more natural it becomes to offer it to yourself. True strength isn't measured by how firmly you stand your ground, but by how far you can stretch your understanding without losing footing. That's the paradox of Stoic empathy. It doesn't weaken your resolve. It fortifies your connections, and in a world desperate for bridges, that's the kind of unshakable presence that truly endures. There's a split second between provocation and response, a fleeting moment most people rush through, but Stoics treat as sacred ground. This 20-second habit is the art of the deliberate delay, a practice Seneca perfected during Nero's volatile reign. In his letters, he describes how orators in ancient Roman courts would pause sometimes for entire breaths before answering accusations. These weren't just dramatic flourishes, they were psychological firewalls. Imagine facing a jury's hostile stare or an emperor's capricious temper. The wrong word could mean exile or worse. Seneca observed how the most effective advocates would physically step back, adjust their togas, or take a sip of water. Each gesture bought them critical seconds to let the heat of emotion cool and reason take the helm. Modern neuroscience reveals why this works. When insulted or challenged, the amygdala, your brain's alarm system, triggers a flood of cortisol and adrenaline. This hijacks your prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational thought, for roughly 6 seconds. That's your biological Stoic pause, a narrow window where choice still exists before reflex takes over. Seneca's courtroom strategy leverages this. By inserting even a 3-second delay, counting silently, sipping water, or simply exhaling, you create space for your higher mind to intervene. The difference between "you're an idiot" and "help me understand your perspective" often comes down to that breath. But the Stoic delay isn't just about avoiding outbursts. It's a gateway to strategic advantage. In one letter, Seneca recounts how his teacher Attalus would respond to insults with silence followed by a question. Is there truth in this? If so, I'll correct it. If not, why should I care? This 2-step filter evaluation before reaction transforms potential conflicts into opportunities for growth. Epictetus took it further, advising students to treat insults like objects being handed to them. If someone offers you a gift and you decline it, who owns it? The giver. Apply this to harsh words. Try this today. Carry a small object, a smooth stone, a coin, as a physical prompt. When provoked, transfer it from one pocket to the other before speaking. The tactile interruption disrupts autopilot reactions. Or borrow Seneca's 3-gate test. Before responding, ask, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If it clears all 3, speak. If not, let silence stand guard. History's most composed figures mastered this pause. Lincoln wrote fiery letters to critics, then stored them unsent. Queen Elizabeth II maintained her trademark poise by counting to 10 in multiple languages during tense moments. Their power came not from suppressing emotion, but from refusing to let it dictate terms. The deeper magic of this habit: over time, the pause stops being something you do and becomes who you are. Reactions slow not because you're stifling them, but because your baseline response shifts from reflex to reflection. And that's when people notice there's something unshakable about you, not because you never feel anger, but because you've made space between feeling and action, where true agency lies. Every great Stoic had guides, not just books, but living examples who lit the path before them. This 23rd habit cuts to the heart of wisdom. seeking mentorship isn't a sign of weakness, it's the ultimate act of practical humility. The ancient Stoics didn't just study philosophy, they apprenticed under masters. Zeno learned from Crates, who studied with Diogenes. Epictetus trained under Musonius Rufus, who shaped Seneca's thinking. Even Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, kept mentors like Junius Rusticus close, writing, "He introduced me to Epictetus' lectures and lent me his own copy." Imagine that, the most powerful man in the ancient world, humbly borrowing scrolls from his teacher. But what if your mentors aren't physically present? The Stoics had an answer: build a personal advisory council across time and space. Seneca corresponded with the long-dead philosopher Hecatto through his writings, debating ethics as if they were in the same room. You can do the same. Start by selecting 3 figures, historical, contemporary, or even fictional, whose virtues mirror your aspirations. A modern entrepreneur might choose Marcus Aurelius for leadership, Nelson Mandela for forgiveness, and Marie Curie for tenacity. When facing a crossroads, ask, what would my counsel advise? This isn't fantasy roleplay. It's strategic pattern matching, using history's greatest minds as your compass. The magic lies in specificity. Don't just admire a mentor's achievements, study their process. How did Epictetus respond when Emperor Domitian exiled him? He opened a philosophy school for Rome's outcasts, turning rejection into purpose. When Lincoln faced Civil War despair, he reread Stoic texts to steady his resolve. Mentorship at this level isn't about idolizing, it's about reverse engineering resilience. Try this exercise. Pick one challenge you're facing and research how 3 different Stoic-aligned figures handled similar trials. A breakup, see how Cotto maintained dignity after divorce. Career uncertainty, study how Seneca navigated political purges. The goal isn't to copy their actions, but to internalize their frameworks. Modern psychology confirms why this works. Studies on social learning theory show we adopt behaviors faster by observing role models than through abstract study. Stanford researchers found that people who visualized a mentor while tackling difficult tasks persisted 70% longer than those working alone. Your brain literally wires itself to new possibilities when you surround yourself, even imaginatively, with those who have walked further down the path. Practical steps make this tangible. Create a mentor journal. Each morning, write one lesson from a Stoic figure you're studying, then predict how it might apply to your day. At night, reflect on where you applied it well or missed opportunities. Or borrow Benjamin Franklin's method. He kept a checklist tracking how often he embodied virtues modeled by Socrates and Cicero. Over time, you'll notice patterns. Maybe you channel Seneca's patience in meetings but struggle with Epictetus' detachment toward criticism. That's the gold: self-awareness shaped by external wisdom. The deepest mentorship often comes from unexpected sources. A barrister who handles rush hours with grace can teach equanimity. A grandparent's stories might embody Amor Fati better than any text. The Stoics called this the unity of virtue. Truth echoes everywhere once you learn to listen. Your advisory council isn't complete until it includes both the monumental and the mundane philosophers and everyday sages who prove wisdom isn't confined to scrolls. Here's the ultimate test of this habit: when your actions begin to surprise you. The day you respond to betrayal with unexpected compassion because Marcus whispered in your mental ear, or walk away from a toxic opportunity hearing Seneca's warning about expensive things costing your peace. That's when you know your mentors aren't just influences. They've become voices in your deepest dialogue, steering you toward the person you're becoming. And that's the mark of an unshakable life, standing on the shoulders of giants, not to see further than them, but to see through them until their wisdom becomes your own. The clock is ticking right now, not in some distant future or trapped in the past, but in this exact moment where your life is actually happening. That's the essence of the 24th Stoic habit, living so fully in the present that worries about tomorrow and regrets from yesterday lose their grip on you. The Stoics didn't call this mindfulness, they called it prosoph, the art of vigilant attention, but their techniques mirror what modern psychology now prescribes for anxiety. Picture two versions of yourself, one scrolling through emails while half listening to a loved one, brain juggling a dozen concerns at once. The other is wholly immersed in the conversation, noticing the sunlight through the window, the warmth of the cup in your hands, the texture of your breath. The first version is stretched thin across time, the second is unshakably here. Marcus Aurelius captured this in a journal entry. Concentrate every minute on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice. He wasn't advising passive absorption, he was describing active presence, the kind a surgeon brings to an incision or a musician to a crescendo. Modern research reveals why this matters. Multitasking doesn't just reduce productivity, it frays your nervous system. Stanford studies show chronic multitaskers experience heightened stress hormones and diminished memory, their attention scattered like light through a broken lens. The Stoic alternative, single tasking with intention. When you eat, just eat. When you listen, just listen. It's not about slowing down, it's about showing up. Grounding techniques bridge ancient wisdom and modern science. The Stoics practiced physical anchoring, focusing on the feel of a coin in their palm or their feet on the cobblestones to tether themselves during turmoil. Today, therapists teach the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Name 5 things you see, 4 you can touch, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. Both achieve the same goal, yanking attention back from hypothetical disasters to the safe, solid reality of now. Try this the next time stress hijacks your thoughts. Pause and trace the rim of your coffee cup with your finger, noting its temperature, texture, and weight. Like Epictetus said, he who laughs at himself never runs out of things to laugh at. Humor helps, but so does tactile awareness, both ground you in the moment. The contrast with modern multitasking couldn't be starker. Ancient Stoics didn't have smartphones, but they understood the danger of divided attention. Seneca warned his students about the man who is everywhere and nowhere, whose life slips through his fingers like sand because he never truly inhabits any single moment. Fast forward to today, where the average office worker switches tasks every 3 minutes and notifications fracture focus into crumbs. The cost: a study from the University of California found it takes 23 minutes to fully regain deep focus after an interruption. The Stoic remedy isn't Luddism, it's selective depth. Designate sacred hours for undistracted work, using apps to block digital intrusions. Schedule scrolling like coffee breaks, contained, intentional, never bleeding into moments meant for living. History's most centered figures cultivated presence under pressure. Leonardo da Vinci would sometimes stare at a blank wall for hours, training his mind to observe subtle details. Beethoven took solitary walks, noting how rustling leaves and distant church bells shaped his symphonies. Their genius wasn't just talent, it was the ability to notice. The Stoics took this further, making presence a moral duty. Musonius Rufus taught that to neglect the present is to steal from your own life. Like a farmer so obsessed with next year's harvest that he lets this season's crops rot. Practical steps make this tangible. Start with micro moments of focus. Drink your morning tea without checking your phone, savoring its aroma and warmth. Try Stoic time blocks, 20-minute chunks where you do one thing with full attention, whether writing a report or playing with your child. Even boredom becomes fertile ground. Instead of reaching for distractions, observe the itch of restlessness without scratching it. Over time, you'll notice a shift. The present moment stops feeling like a waiting room for real life and becomes the main event, the final test, presence in discomfort. When stuck in traffic or standing in a slow line, most people reflexively grab their phones. The Stoic alternative: stand still, feel your feet rooted to the ground, and observe your surroundings like an anthropologist. That woman sighing loudly, a reminder of shared humanity. the flickering fluorescent light, a lesson in impermanence. This habit doesn't eliminate life's frustrations, it transforms them into a playground for attention. And that's when you'll feel it, an unshakable calm, not because everything is perfect, but because you're fully alive to what is. The most profound paradox of Stoicism lies in this. The path to an unshakable self is built not through self-obsession, but through self-forgetting. This 25th and final habit brings us full circle: service to others as the ultimate expression of Stoic strength. Epictetus, the philosopher born into slavery, framed it plainly. What are we but leaves on a great tree? The root is humanity itself. His point wasn't poetic flourish, it was practical philosophy. Just as a leaf withers when severed from the branch, our sense of purpose dulls when disconnected from collective flourishing. Consider two warriors returning from battle, one obsessed with medals and glory, the other quietly teaching younger soldiers how to survive winter campaigns. History remembers the second kind. Marcus Aurelius didn't write meditations for publication. He composed them as nightly reminders to serve Rome with humility, scribbling, "What doesn't benefit the hive doesn't benefit the bee." Even Seneca, who amassed wealth, insisted true joy came from lighting other men's torches from your own flame. This habit isn't about grand gestures. It's the daily discipline of asking, how can my skills alleviate real suffering? A teacher's patience with a struggling student, a nurse's extra minute holding a frightened patient's hand, a stranger returning a dropped wallet. These are Stoic acts. They require neither wealth nor status, only the willingness to see yourself as part of a larger whole. Modern research echoes this. Studies on helpers high show altruistic acts trigger dopamine and oxytocin release, reducing stress more effectively than passive leisure. The Stoics took it further with cosmopolitanism, the radical idea that all humans share bonds deeper than nationality or creed. When Zeno described his ideal society, he envisioned a world where kindness outranked bloodlines. Today, this translates to small but revolutionary choices: supporting a co-worker's project without seeking credit, mentoring someone who can't repay you, or simply listening without waiting for your turn to speak. Try this today. Perform one act of anonymous service, pay for a stranger's coffee, leave an encouraging note in a library book, or volunteer skills without adding it to your resume. Then reflect on Seneca's observation: no one can live happily who looks only to themselves. You'll notice something unexpected. The less you perform service for recognition, the more it nourishes your own resilience. That's the secret Epictetus knew. Duty isn't a burden, it's the weight that grounds us when life's storms rage. And in that groundedness, we find the deepest kind of unshakable strength, the kind that doesn't just endure, but elevates everything it touches. 25 habits, each a thread but woven together, they create an unshakable fabric of resilience. Imagine standing at the edge of a river, tossing in one pebble after another. At first, the water barely ripples, but with each stone, the current shifts, the depth changes until the entire flow bends to their collective weight. That's what these Stoic practices do. Alone, they're simple shifts in perspective. Together, they reshape how you move through the world. You don't need to adopt all 25 at once. Start with the one that hums loudest in your bones. Maybe it's morning reflection, carving out 10 minutes of stillness before the day demands your attention. Or perhaps it's negative visualization, training yourself to stare down worst-case scenarios until they lose their fangs. Even just the deliberate pause, that split-second space between provocation and response, can become a superpower in a reactive world. History's most resilient figures weren't born unshakable. They built themselves habit by habit, day by day. Marcus Aurelius journaled his way through war. Epictetus transformed slavery into a masterclass on inner freedom. Seneca turned exile into a laboratory for joy. They prove that transformation isn't about grand gestures, it's about the quiet, repeated choice to show up differently. And here's the secret: these habits compound. Master your mornings and you'll find patience comes easier. Practice voluntary discomfort and setbacks lose their sting. Cultivate indifference to praise and suddenly your self-worth isn't held hostage by others' opinions. But don't just take my word for it, try it yourself. Pick one habit this week, test it like a scientist, observe how it shifts your reactions, your relationships, your peace. Then share your findings, drop a comment below and tell us which habit resonated most. Did morning reflection bring clarity? Did Amor Fati help you reframe a frustration? Your insights might light the way for others, and if you're hungry for more Stoic wisdom, hit subscribe. We're just scratching the surface. The path to an unshakable life isn't a sprint, it's a series of steps, each one deliberate. So take the first one today. The river of time is flowing. Will you let it carry you, or will you learn to steer?